Good evening. I'm Colleen Hegrenis. I'm Senior Vice President here at St. Catherine University. And on behalf of President Andrea Lee, I welcome you to St. Catherine University tonight. It's a joy to see so many of you here on this beautiful March evening. Before we introduce this evening's speaker, I'd like to tell you a bit about Joan Kelly and Bonnie Jean Kelly Distinguished Visiting Scholar Program. This is a Scholar in Residence program designed to engage nationally recognized leaders with the students and faculty of this university. It is made possible through the support of Ms. Joan Kelly, an alumna and generous benefactor of St. Catherine. Intended to enrich the academic life of the university, Joan's gift makes it possible for us to bring a distinguished scholar to campus annually for seminars, workshops, classroom visits, consultations with students and faculty, and public lectures like tonight. I'm pleased to say that she's here with us somewhere this evening, and wherever you are, Joan, because I can't see you in the dark here, I thank you on behalf of all of us who benefit so much from your vision and generosity. Tonight's program, this year's program actually has been planned in celebration of our newly named School of Business and Professional Studies. Tonight's speaker, Ms. Simran Sethi, embodies the school's mission, which is to prepare students to initiate ideas and take action in a globally connected, ever-changing world. That is what she does. Tonight's speakers spent the last 2 days visiting classes, meeting with students and faculty groups, and connecting with friends of the university. In every venue, she has challenged and charmed all with her intelligence and her warmth. Her visit has been coordinated by a team of faculty and staff of the School of Business and Professional Studies, and they deserve our thanks for bringing such a dynamic speaker and scholar to St. Kate's. The team is represented by Dr. Rafael Cervantes, Associate Professor of Chair in Communication Studies, who will introduce our 2013 Joan Kelly and Bonnie Jean Kelly Distinguished Visiting Scholar. Enjoy.
Hello, fabulous audience. I hope you all are doing well today. So we have an excellent speaker that is joining us today, and I got to tell you, as I was thinking about having such a accomplished and really well-respected scholar and storyteller here that's been such an excellent advocate for the environment, I had to start thinking about my own stories, and when was it that I started to think about the environment as being something that mattered, that we needed to take care of, that was important. And so for me, I realized that happened, that moment for me that triggered that happened when I was living in El Paso, Texas, which, I don't know if you know where El Paso is. It is in West Texas, and it shares a border with Juarez, Mexico, which is the third largest city in Mexico. And I mean, they're close, like they're right up, they're buddies, they're right next to each other, Juarez and El Paso. And in fact, when you're driving along the I-10, you can look and see Juarez right across the Rio Grande River. It's right there. And in a few places, as you're driving down the I-10, you pass what I one day learned was the poorest, or one of the poorest sections of Juarez. And it took a while before I realized why that was the poorest region, why that was the poorest area of Juarez. Right there across the I-10, just looked like a normal, everyday neighborhood, it seemed. Didn't look particularly like a rundown neighborhood, didn't look terrible. But I realized this, I was driving just to school one day with my dad, and we were driving by, and it was winter, it was really cold, and there was just this big cloud of smoke, just of smog, just hanging right over that section of Juarez. And I asked my dad, what's with all the smoke? What is that? What's happening? Why is that there? And he pointed at this giant smokestack that was connected to this refinery that was just so close by. And then he pointed at the mountains. And he showed me how the mountains just held all that smoke in and held it right over that part of Juarez, just contained it right there, so that it just sat there, and the people living there were just breathing it all in. And he told me That's the poorest section of Juarez. And I said, why can't they move? Why are they living there? And he said, they have nowhere else to go. Those with the least suffer the most. And so that I remember that it really resonated with me. It really struck a chord, and it reminds me of when I think about the environment. I think about taking care of the environment. I think about that, and that when we think about caring for the environment, we're caring for each other. And so I share that story with you because it was my story. It got me thinking about the environment, and hopefully, maybe you're thinking about your own stories, those moments that you had where you realized, this is something that we need to take care of. And I shared this story because, maybe it's going to get you listening a little bit, because you can connect, because we connect with each other through stories. And I shared this story because Simran Sethi, our Bonnie Jean Kelly and Joan Kelly Distinguished Scholar in Residence, also recognizes the value of stories. And her successful career has been devoted to sharing the stories of our world through the lenses of food and agriculture. Through sharing these stories, her goal has been to connect with diverse audiences so that they will see the value in becoming responsible stewards of our planet. This commitment to storytelling is evident in her education. I'm going to take a sip of water. Is evident in her education. So after earning her BA from another fabulous all-women's institution, Smith College, she went on to get her MBA from the Presidio in San Francisco. And as she was talking to my class today, I learned she decided to get an MBA because she wanted to learn the right language to use so that she could persuade people with the business case for why environmental justice is something that matters. Right. As an associate professor at the William Allen White School of Journalism and Mass Communication in Kansas, Simran taught students the value of making the invisible stories visible, as she says. As a speaker, she's spoken about sustainability in China, Europe, United States. Her environmental message has been heard on Ellen, Oprah, and Martha, talking about Martha Stewart. As a journalist and storyteller, she's been the senior managing editor of MTV News in India. She's the host of the Emmy Award-winning PBS documentary, A School in the Woods. She's the contributing author of Ethical Markets, Growing the Green Economy, which won the Bronze Axiom Award for Best Business Ethics Book. For all these accomplishments and many more, she was awarded the Smith College Medal in 2009. This is given to graduates with extraordinary professional accomplishments and who have demonstrated a very committed approach to community service. It's for all these accomplishments and many more that is why we have asked her to be the Bonnie Jean Kelly and Joan Kelly Distinguished Scholar in Residence. I think she truly is an excellent model of a person that's lived a life that is dedicated to social justice. And I hope that you will all join me in welcoming her now as she presents on women's work, the role of women in sustainability. Let's give her a round of applause, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for signing also. I'm having a little timer right here with me because I'm a bit long-winded sometimes. And the topic that I'm going to talk about tonight is one that is very dear to my heart. I'd like to first start by giving thanks to Joan Kelly and to her loving memory of her sister, Bonnie Jean, to Colleen Hegrains, to Mary Angela Baker, Rafael Cervantes, Sue Cuncio, Anupama Pasricha, and the entire community of St. Catherine for welcoming me as your Kelly Scholar in Residence. I am honored and humbled to follow in the steps of Azar Nafisi and Rita Dove, two women I hold in high esteem. I can't thank you enough for this honor. And I'd like to give thanks for all the resources that it took to get me to you. When Raphael was speaking about stories in our environment. One of the most dominant stories that I believe in is that everything that we care about exists within this ecosystem, and that the idea that somehow the environment belongs to one political party or one socioeconomic group is destroying something that is precious to all of us. Everything we love, everything we do, everything we have is connected to our greater world. I'd like to give thanks for the resources that it took to get me to you. The fossil fuels that powered the cars and the plane, the cow who gave up her milk for my morning coffee that I really needed today, the growers who picked the vegetables that were in my Kurdish lunch, and St. Catherine Dining Services who have spoiled me and added, I would say, 2 pounds to my belly in the last 2 days with delicious local and organic food. The efforts that you all have gone to welcome me here are extraordinary, and I am very grateful for them. And I'd like to thank one final person, and that person is Azalesh, the housekeeper who cleaned my room at the hotel. We are only here through the good efforts of our community. During my time here at St. Catherine, I have met outstanding young women, and they, I know, are creating greatness and destined for greatness. So this presentation is dedicated to you ladies, for you to recognize the greatness in yourself, the greatness that I already see, and toward manifesting it in ways that helps make the world better. I'd like to speak to you tonight about sustainability and the role that women can play in advancing sustainability initiatives. And this is, of course, coming during a time when we're hearing a lot out in the world about women's role in business, right? And efforts to, as Sheryl Sandberg, the COO of Facebook, says, lean in. I embrace that idea wholeheartedly, and I hope that we will all lean in together. The slides that you see behind me are images of women who have transformed my understanding of sustainability. From Assistant Secretary of Defense Sharon Burke's use of renewables as a strategy of military effectiveness, to Vandana Shiva's support of smallholder farmers fighting for sovereignty of their land and seeds. From Kindley Walsh Lawler's efforts to reduce water usage in GAP's manufacturing and end products, to Hazel Henderson's redefinition of wealth and value within the society. These are all women who have shaped my understanding of what sustainability is and what sustainability can be. And I phrase it that way because there is no singular definition. The definition of sustainability is one that resonates with you, and I believe it is born out of each and every one of us. I'll give you some clues tonight, but what I hope that you'll leave with is an understanding that is meaningful and intimately connected to who you are. So what I'm going to do is a little unconventional. I'm actually not going to talk about every single one of those women that I listed. This PowerPoint will be posted on the St. Catherine website. I requested this, and I included hyperlinks to some of these women's most inspiring and innovative work. I couldn't be here sharing with you tonight were it not for these women and the ways that they have manifested sustainability in the world. And what I think you'll see in them, and hopefully through tonight's presentation, is that there is sustainability exists in the multiple. Right? One place where sustainability is in full force is here in the Twin Cities. It's absolutely inspiring what's going on here, from food to fuel, from the use of bikes to the use of renewable resources. I am really inspired by what's going on here in a place that I have not spent nearly enough time in, but have loved from afar. Not everyone knows what I'm talking about or what sustainability entails, so I'm going to share some definitions that can help you define this for yourselves in your lives, in your communities, and in your workplaces. So we'll start with a her story, because it begins with a woman. The term sustainability came into common usage in 1983 through the United Nations Brundtland Commission on Sustainable Development. The formal name is the World Commission on Environment and Development, but it came to be known by the name of the chair, the former Norwegian Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland. The commission was convened by Brundtland to address growing concerns about the accelerating deterioration of the human environment and natural resources, and the consequences of that deterioration for economic and social development. In establishing the commission, the United Nations Assembly recognized that environmental issues were global in nature. The 1987 report, Our Common Future, that the commission created, defines sustainability as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, I believe this origin is important because the definition of sustainability is about creating systems that would help, not harm, developing nations. Sustainability, says Nobel Prize winner Murray Gell-Mann, means living on nature's income rather than its capital. Sustainability is an economic state where the demands placed upon the environment by people and commerce can be met without reducing the capacity of the environment to provide for future generations. It can also be expressed in the simple terms of an economic golden rule, says Paul Hawken, my dear friend and the author of the book, The Ecology of Commerce, right? He says, leave the world better than you found it, take no more than you need, and try not to harm life or the environment. And make amends if you do. Paul's book, The Ecology of Commerce, inspired a man by the name of Ray Anderson, who is the head of Interface Carpets, one of the largest commercial textile manufacturers in the world. Now, Ray recounted in his book that he was about to give his annual address to shareholders and to his employees, and he realized that he was in an industry that had incredible opportunity to do better. This was inspired by his relationship with his granddaughter and with a concern for future generations that he encapsulated in the term tomorrow's child. Now, I just want to put this in perspective. If you look down at the carpet just below your feet, 4 billion pounds of that stuff are sent to a landfill every year. Now, if, hypothetically, because you know no beverages are allowed in here other than these, if one were to spill, say, Kool-Aid on the floor, on the carpet, and we saw a big stain, what would we do to get rid of it? Well, typically what was done was the entire carpet was removed, right? So that's why this was contributing to so much waste. Now these carpets, these wall-to-wall carpets were also, many wall-to-wall carpets are affixed with toxic dyes, or embedded with toxic dyes and formaldehydes, and affixed with epoxies that contribute to poor indoor air quality. You know that new building smell? It's kind of similar to that new car smell. Well, with buildings, with our homes as well as our office spaces, the Environmental Protection Agency estimates that indoor air can be twice as polluted as outdoor air. So the industry of textile manufacturing, of carpets in particular, had been demonized as one that was depletive, not restorative. So what did Ray do? He developed modular carpeting. He created biodegradable carpets and instituted a take-back policy to recycle old carpet tiles and scraps into new carpet. It didn't all happen at once, and the perception that the company's share value would plummet didn't happen either. In his book, Ray's book, Mid-Course Correction, he talks about the ascendancy of women in business. He says, it is that instinctive, nurturing nature found more frequently in women, but also present in men, if they will allow it to surface, that will recognize and evaluate in business the vital, indispensable role of genuine caring, caring for human capital and natural capital, as much as we have traditionally cared for financial capital. Now, empathy and connection have long been categorized as women's ways. But what Anderson is saying is that those same traits are the roots of sustainability. And I say this with reverence for all gender identifications and from my story as a women's studies major from another women's college, Smith College. We all have the capacity to access these qualities, and they are qualities that should be celebrated. Another company known for sustainability and thriving because it's such a core part of their brand is Seventh Generation. Their touchstone precept is from the Iroquois Confederacy. Consider the impacts on 7 generations. tomorrow's children's children's children. This marks an extraordinary evolution in business, from Chicago economist Milton Friedman's mandate that the only responsibility of CEOs was to increase shareholder value, to understanding that we all have a responsibility to increase stakeholder value. Stakeholders are employees, the people involved in our supply chain, the natural resources used to create our goods, and the communities in which our businesses reside. A new report from MIT's Sloan Management Review estimates that 61% of companies surveyed that have changed their business models to incorporate sustainability as a vital piece of their management agenda say they have also added profits from their efforts. The companies turning profits from sustainability generally have 5 practices in common. They're prepared to change their business models. They're prepared to lead from the top and integrate sustainability efforts directly into their business. They measure and track their sustainability performance. They understand how their customers view sustainability and what they'd be willing to pay extra for. And they collaborate with people and groups outside of their organization. Now, this notion of collaboration ties directly into the 2003 study by the Institute for Women's Policy Research that says that women's higher levels of empathy, altruism, and personal responsibility make them more interested in environmentalism as a way to protect not only themselves and their families, but also others. This differentiation starts in the womb. Neuropsychiatrist Luann Brizendine says that after 8 weeks in utero, all children's brains appear exactly the same. They're female. Female is nature's default setting. I'm gonna celebrate that with you. Female is nature's default setting. It's only after a surge of testosterone that boys' brains begin to look male, right? And the reasons that little girls may play better together, Dr. Brizendine suggests, is brain wiring. She says they develop verbal ability at a younger age and may just be able to negotiate sharing better than boys. And just as little boys and little girls act differently, adult men and adult women act differently. Male business owners are much more likely to prefer what has come to be called left brain thinking, categorized by logic, facts, and hierarchy. Women also use their right brains, categorized by values, intuition, relationships, and creativity. Now, you know I'm spreading broad brushstrokes here, but there's value in looking at what our differences are and in celebrating them. And I don't want you to get the impression that chicks are all soft and fuzzy, right? Because women tend to use their left brains and right brains equally. We want to focus on what's important to us, our values, and we also want to build relationships and focus on facts and logic. Women tend to foster what's called co-opetition. It's sharing knowledge and expertise with competitors to make whole fields stronger, more sustainable, more ecological, and more equitable. I'm highlighting female examples here, and I do believe there's some connection to our gendered brain, but again, I want to go back to what Ray Anderson said, that these qualities are also present in men if they allow them to surface. I believe the way that we can encourage and allow them to surface is to celebrate them. Judy Wicks, the founder of White Dog Cafe and the co-founder of the Business Alliance of Local Living Economies, started her business of baking breakfast muffins out of the first floor of her house, right? But bakery goods weren't her end goal. Her goal was to create a space where people could come together to share and connect. Her goal was to serve. And for the women who sat with me yesterday afternoon and said, I'm trying to forge my place in the world, what do I do? And I said, go with what you love, right? Follow your passions. Do what is meaningful to you. This is exactly what I'm talking about, okay? Judy's goal was to serve. Your goal might be something else. But I think we define our goal. We define our joy. We define our passion. And then we find the work that fits into that, rather than finding that in the work that we have. whenever possible. I know it's not always possible. Okay, so Judy's 29-year-old restaurant is a place that works with local farmers and suppliers to create the menu, right? She hosts speakers for lectures, and she encourages people to sit together at community tables. The restaurant reaches out into the community through a foundation that supports women entrepreneurs all over the world and sells those global goods for wages that enable women to grow their businesses. This all happens right beside the White Dog Cafe at the corresponding shop, the Black Cat. And let me be clear, this isn't a charity. Judy is the same person who co-founded a company that you may have heard of, Urban Outfitters. All right? From 1997 to 2007, these are the latest statistics I could find, sales in women-owned businesses grew 46%, from $819 billion to $1.2 trillion. This sector grew twice as fast as male-owned businesses and added roughly 500,000 jobs, while other privately held firms lost jobs. This increase was highest in education and healthcare, and also manifested in other sectors. Sharon Hadari from the Center for Women's Business Research, which is based in Washington, D.C., explains that women are coming to business with professional experience that is increasingly similar to men, but approaches to business that are different. And this empathy, this difference might be the key to promoting sustainability. Because when a person is in the habit, she says, of considering the well-being of others as she makes her decisions, she is more likely to anticipate the longer-term and broader implications of each choice or opportunity. This spirit is exemplified by my friend Kinley Walsh-Lawler, who works at Gap. She's the Vice President of Social and Environmental Responsibility and oversees 75 people monitoring the entire Gap supply chain. Now, Kinley would be the first to tell you about the labor challenges Gap has faced. Her goal is to reveal them so the work and oversight can be improved. This transparency has made Gap a leader in responsible apparel. Kinley's care is born out of her story, her upbringing, her family. She views work, as I do, as a seamless expression of her cares. Kinley believes our work should be and can be a reflection of our cares, and that we don't, or that we shouldn't have to check our values at the door in order to make ends meet. And she does whatever she can, not only at Gap headquarters in San Francisco, but at Gap factories in Indonesia and in India to make this a reality. Sustainability in business is about balancing the needs of people, planet, and profit, or pocketbook, right, if you want to bring it closer to home. Augmenting what we call the bottom line to the triple bottom line. There's no single best way to do this. We have to consider the contexts of our organizations and those we serve, and in a more personalized context, the context of our family, the needs of our family and our community. And we have to recognize this is a dynamic construct. Folks here from business and leadership will understand what I'm saying. When we talk about this three-legged stool of sustainability or this triple bottom line of sustainability, it kind of makes me crazy because we're not acknowledging that we are constantly calibrating and making decisions based on multiple factors. Not always in the same way, not always to the same degree, and not always at the same time, right? So there may be imbalance in the stool. But if we look at this in a different way and consider these constructs dynamic, and someone in this room can come up with a great infographic, a new one that we can all refer to, we can see this as a different kind of model, one that is constantly fluctuating, that is living and breathing and evolving as we are and as our needs do. Gap is part of a broader coalition within the apparel industry that's looking at the use of management of water. And I pull out this one example. This coalition is doing a lot of amazing things. But what I was particularly interested in and wanted to share tonight is that Gap's branded denim is made in compliance with their water quality program, which means that the laundries they work with ensure that the wastewater is properly treated before being discharged. Right? This isn't something most people think of when they think about a pair of jeans, right? The embedded water within them. Maybe they're thinking about how are the people who sewed those jeans treated, and I'm very glad if we are, right? but the embedded water, looking past the genes, looking behind the genes, looking at the entire supply chain and thinking about how we can make this better, I believe is a responsibility of sustainable business. Gap, along with Patagonia, Levi's, and others, are also looking at the waters embedded in other textiles and trying to determine how water can be reduced in the growing of the cotton crop. They are trying to close this loop, right? In design terms, sustainability is defined as a shift from a linear take, make, waste, cradle to grave process to a circular borrow, use, return model. A great example of this was Gap's 2010 initiative to take back old jeans and upcycle them into denim insulation for homes. And I need to check in with Kinley as to why that didn't continue. One of my favorite definitions of sustainability comes from the government and ties right back into design. It's from the U.S. General Services Administration. And they say, sustainable design seeks to reduce negative impacts on the environment and the health and comfort of building occupants, thereby improving building performance. Now, you can strip away the building if that's not your thing, but think about the language that they've used here and the framing, right? The basic objectives of sustainability are to reduce consumption of non-renewable resources, to minimize waste, and create healthy, productive environments. Utilizing a philosophy that encourages decisions at each phase of the design process, and that will reduce negative impacts on the environment and the health of occupants without compromising the bottom line. And here's my favorite part. It is an integrated, holistic approach that encourages compromise and trade-offs. This definition recognizes at every juncture we have a choice, and it acknowledges the complexity and trade-offs involved in making those choices. This is an inevitable part of the process. Do we eat the GMO soy burger or the CAFO beef burger? Do we support the local conventional farmer or buy the organic produce shipped from Chile? Can we afford the extra $3.50 in catering for the glass plate? Or should we go for the paper ones? Can we have fun? Can this process be joyful? What is really at stake with the kinds of decisions that we're making? I'll give you an example of how deep this can go. Right? Sometimes it's hard when we're moving through our lives to recognize the kind of effect sustainability can have. And Sharon Burke's definition and explanation of sustainability for the U.S. military transformed how I think about this. Sustainability provides the opportunity for the military, she says, to build a critical relationship between the military and civil society by activating values like independence and patriotism. The U.S. Department of Defense, by the way, is the single largest consumer of energy in the United States and ranks as one of the top 50 greenhouse gas emitters in the world. The Department of Defense is a major energy user because they have a mission that requires it. I'm a dove, not much of a hawk, but I will tell you, there is no one on any political side that wouldn't celebrate the idea of conserving resources and supporting our troops. According to Assistant Secretary of Defense Sharon Burke, who I just mentioned, 3,000 Army personnel or contractors were killed or wounded between 2003 and 2007 in attacks on water and fuel convoys. Energy is called the lifeblood of the Department of Defense. There's a crucial need for a self-sustainable energy solution, and, as I mentioned, this is a bipartisan goal. In the military, the triple bottom line is redefined as cost savings, resource conservation, and lives saved. So, while Congress bickers about climate change, the Department of Defense is acting on it. Sustainability is a complex, dynamic process, and that's why you have to define it for yourselves, for what your budget allows, for what your heart desires, for what the future demands. This is particularly crucial in areas that are vulnerable to what economist Dana Meadows called overshoot, going beyond the capacity of our resources, consuming too much, extracting too much, not allowing for something to be restored before being depleted again. This came to my attention in a stark way when I was on a panel that I moderated on palm oil. Palm oil was actually recently just discussed on NPR. It's an edible plant oil that's used in everything from cookies to laundry soap to biodiesel. People love to put it in cookies because it's a sort of thickening agent. Now in 2007, the Jakarta Post said that Indonesia was set to enter the Guinness Book of World Records for the fastest pace of deforestation in the world. Between 2000 and 2005, an area of forest equal to 300 soccer fields was being destroyed every hour in pursuit of this palm oil. Rainforest Action Network has been instrumental in slowing this depletion. Becky Tarbotton was the executive director of the organization until she met an untimely death a few months ago at the end of 2012. She is sorely missed, but her legacy lives on right here in the Twin Cities. RAND's actions on drawing attention to palm oil depletion helped catalyze General Mills' commitment to sourcing 100% environmentally responsible palm oil by 2015. You're right here. Please hold them to it. Years away. Using data from 2001 to 2008 Gallup polls that focused specifically on environmental issues, Michigan State University sociologist Aaron McWright found that women were more likely to believe in environmental degradation and to understand it, right? What do I mean by that? Well, that the connectedness and understanding of issues that were global in context and that were slower moving, such as climate change, were issues that women had a greater grasp of accepting, even when it wasn't happening right in their backyard. What psychologists will tell us is that is the best way to make these issues tangible, to make the invisible visible, is to bring them up close, either geographically or emotionally. But that women, even in defiance of those kinds of frames, still have a greater understanding of these issues, according to the data. A greater percentage of women than men worry about global warming a great deal, and a greater percentage of them feel that it will threaten their way of life during their lifetime, and believe the seriousness of global warming is underestimated in media. Now, these results echo research on gender differentiation and the environment conducted by Paul Mohai. He concluded that background characteristics, including homemaker and parental status, appeared to have little, if any, effect on gender differences in environmental concern. In other words, to the extent that gender differences in environmental concerns do exist, the different socialization of men and women seem to account for the differences, rather than the roles that they occupy within the home or other structural factors. So while the female brain seems most naturally suited for sustainable thinking and decision making, it might actually be socialization, not physiology or psychology, that forms the basis for our propensity towards sustainability. And again, it doesn't preclude others from being able to understand or engage with sustainability in productive and passionate ways. It just enables us to approach and celebrate different ways to addressing our issues. Andy Rubin was the first sustainability officer for Walmart, and he came from their strategy division. They forged their strategic initiative when their share values started to drop, right? The corporate strategy department decided that they needed to start paying more attention to the issues that their customers were talking about. And one of those issues was the environment. And it was an issue that Andy shared with me they felt like they could effectively address, right? So it also was an issue that tied right back into their mandate to save money and live better. Their old always low prices positioning reflected what came to be highlighted as a fairly ruthless position of lower costs at any price. Now, as for where Walmart stands now, I go back to Andy's request to me during my interview with him to judge the company on its results. How are employees in the supply chain treated, and how are resources managed? What I will tell you is Walmart, by demanding their supply chain reduce packaging by 30%, right? by trying to stock sustainable fish within their stores, by bringing into their stores organic milk, has transformed the supply chain in ways that smaller organizations could not. And I say this because it is very easy for me to stand up here on this podium and call out companies and tell them to hurry up and ask them to do better, right? And I will say I celebrate the incremental steps. As Raphael explained earlier, I got a business degree to better understand the language of business, because I believe business, like journalism, is a powerful tool for transformation. As you explore what sustainability means to you, to your institution, to your community, to your family, you need to ask yourselves what your core values are, how you relate to your environment and to your loved ones and to your employees and the people who make your goods and the people who buy them. How do we manifest what it is we care about with authenticity, with transparency? And how do we communicate them? I want to go back to Walmart for a minute. Adam Werbach was the youngest president of the Sierra Club, and he consulted with Walmart when they started their sustainability strategy. And he's now started a new venture with Andy Rubin. The new venture is Yurtle. It's a platform for giving away things to people that you know or getting things that you need from them. Adam says that one of the best ways to enable sustainability to happen, whether it's in a boardroom or a classroom or a church or a playground, is for people to feel a personal investment in the outcome. Now, this is exactly what Bethlehem Alemu has done with her Ethiopian shoe company, Soul Rebels. She says she selected footwear because she considered it an ideal platform to share indigenous craft heritages and artisan talents that exist in Ethiopia, right? Again, she didn't start with the shoe. She started with the passion, and she started with the values. She also recognized that she could source and make almost all of the materials locally in her shoes, creating an export product from 100% local inputs to reduce environmental impacts. We all need this ecosystem. We all know that it's not an issue of one political party, one ethnicity, one age group, or one gender. The challenge is to tap into the universals while also leveraging our similarities and differences. Women tend to communicate by finding common ground first, while men tend to initiate communication through status comparisons or positioning. This tendency could help us build the kind of networks needed in stakeholder relationships, community building, and cooperation within our families. These relationships extend to natural resources as well. Alice Waters, the world-renowned chef and owner of Chez Panisse restaurant in Berkeley, started the Edible Schoolyard Project as a place for children in an inner-city school in Berkeley to learn about nature, to connect with nature not just in a textbook, but through firsthand experience of planting seeds and growing food. So an organic garden is part of the class curriculum in science, social studies, and more. The food that students grow, the chickens that students raise, right, are used in school food. This is an integrated, interconnected approach that isn't surprising. Women are more likely, when making a decision, not only to get advice from outside experts, but also consult people who will be affected by the decision. Women, you may be familiar with this, talk, and because more of our brain is devoted to language, this is hardwired into us, ladies, is devoted to language and communication with strong left brain and language abilities. We tend to put strong emotional attachments to the language that we use. Yet, despite all these extraordinary leadership qualities that we women possess, we are not represented in upper leadership positions as much as we should be. We are not in the positions of power to affect change. This needs to change. As Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg articulates, we need to lean in. No matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you have in your pocket, It is time to call on your courage and assert your power and take your place in the world. A new study examining companies' environmental, social, and governance performance found companies with one or more women on their boards were significantly more likely to have improved sustainability practices. This study co-author, Kelly McElhaney, who's an assistant professor at Berkeley's Haas School of Business, says, this isn't a women's issue or a men's issue. It's a collective and business opportunity. To expand female board members, McElhaney cited 4 critical steps. And again, if you're not building a board, map this onto what you are creating. Conducting more research, building a pipeline of women to serve on corporate boards, right? Finding a pipeline of mentors. Fostering a business community of sponsors for women that includes both men and women, right? We want female mentors and we want male ones too. And training business leaders of all genders to be change agents. Norway is an aspirational model in this regard. They're the first country to require corporate boards must be 40% women-owned, or after a grace period, lose their right to operate and shut down. Now, studies differ on the impact of this mandate, but proponents note that women are more likely to ask questions on boards than men. They're less bound by convention. And that inquisitiveness, that curiosity, tends to increase corporate accountability across the board. Now, I do want to note that speaking up does not always work in our favor. Victoria Breskel, assistant professor at Yale's School of Management, has studied the interplay between power and gender. In her experiments, she asked a group of men and women to evaluate a hypothetical CEO who was either male or female and was described as either offering opinions as much as possible or tending to withhold opinions. Female CEOs who offered their opinions were judged less competent and less suited to leadership than female CEOs who were the strong, silent types. The patterns for men were the exact opposite. In other words, both sexes were penalized for failing to conform to traditional gender stereotypes. And female participants showed these gendered patterns of judgment just as strongly as the men. This conditioning is something we all have the opportunity to address, because ultimately, it hurts us all. Sustainability isn't a movement that can be addressed by a handful of powerful people forcing the issue from a pedestal on high. This must be addressed by all of us, all genders, all ethnicities, from top to bottom, and from grassroots all the way up. Michaela Walsh is a former stockbroker turned philanthropist who co-founded the global organization Women's World Banking on the premise that our natural resources couldn't be sustained unless people she referred to as closest to the earth, at the lowest end of the economic chain, were able to manage that system and preserve it. She asked, how can we develop an economy that doesn't allow 50% of the workforce and producers in those economies to have the same access to tools of production as men? So she works to bridge the gap through lending, offering an equitable, fair rate of interest for women to borrow money rather than the grossly inflated rates of moneylenders, which used to be the only way poor people could secure capital in developing countries. To give you an example, research indicates that when a woman in India earns 100 rupees, 92% of them, right, so rupees are our currency, 92% of those rupees go back into the mouths of their children, back into medicine that takes care of kids, and back into school books that educate those kids. If a man gets that increased income, only 40% of it goes back into the household economy. In the foreword to the International Human Rights of Women, former Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton says, the fortunes of nations are inextricably linked to the fortunes of women. It is this simple. Where women flourish, their families flourish. And where families flourish, communities and nations flourish. Issues affecting women and their families are not soft issues to be relegated to the sidelines of serious debate. Rather, they are among the hardest and most important issues we face. Among the slides of my most powerful change agents are my mother and my sister, because the home that they built and the way that they raised their children, the way my sister raises my nephew, is an inspiration. And he will be one of those leaders that challenges the stereotypes and lives his sustainability. The most powerful change agents are those who connect with big thinkers, with motivated doers, who connect the left and the right brain. My work in sustainability and in journalism is built upon the enduring belief that our stories change us. That it's not just the facts, but the stories we tell, the stories that we embody that transform us. Psychology bears this out. Yale researcher Tony Lyserowitz told me that psychologists have almost no evidence that facts change people's decision-making. Linguistics professor Deborah Tannen says that more often than not, during conversations, women tend to listen while men tend to talk. I want you to consider what that means when we're telling our stories. And I recognize that I also said women talk a lot. We talk and we listen, right? What Tannen explains is that women and men fall into an unequal pattern because of the differences in their interactional habits, right? So we tend to talk more frequently in intimate settings, but when we're in larger settings, we tend to step back and listen because we seek to build rapport. And we're inclined to downplay our expertise rather than display it. Now, since men tend to value the position of center stage and feelings of knowing more, they seek out opportunities to publicly gather and disseminate factual information. In studying storytelling habits, Tannen's found that women's narratives tend to be about community, while men's narratives tend to be about contest and conquest. So for women, the community is the source of power. If we see life in terms of contest, she said, a struggle against nature and other people, then a struggle against, if we frame both stories as struggle, I should say, she says that men form these stories as a struggle against nature and a struggle against other men, whereas women perceive this as a struggle against being cut off from their community. So women tend to create community through the very act of speaking to one another, through sharing their stories. We value listening as a way of making others feel comfortable and important, and as a means of encouraging others to find their own voices and grow. And I say this to you because how you tell your story to yourself, how you tell your story to others is critically important. But what is also important is how you listen to other stories, how you connect with other people. The first way to work toward manifesting sustainability and bridging some of these divides that we've seen across socioeconomic groups, race, and gender is to listen, to understand what is in people's pool of care, what behavioral economists Deborah Linville and Gregory Fisher call the finite pool of worry, and to move within that space of care, to address your stories in frames that people are already connected to, or to displace one of the worries that people already have. I was asked tonight to not only talk about women and leadership, but to suggest to you what you could do. Now, I've made a lot of tip lists. When you were on the Oprah show, the Martha show, the Ellen show, you get asked to give 5 easy ways to save the planet. Your top 10 tips for saving the planet. And go. Okay, well, I'll tell you, I obliged because I wanted to be on those shows. And I know that we start with small changes that lead to bigger transformation. But the truth is this takes work. Sustainability is about our relationship. That's my timer. I talked too long. This is about our relationship with our work, with our community, with our planet. And like all sacred relationships, it is one that is messy. It is one that is complex and one that is constantly being recalibrated. It involves compromises and trade-offs. I can think of no better suggestion to you than to build on Tannen and Helgeson's work and ask you to listen to one another. I mean it. That's my tip. Change the light bulbs, use the reusable bottles, drive less, bike more, but really, fundamentally, more than anything, listen to yourself and listen to each other. Find out where your passions grow. If you are passionate about clothing, then learn more about labor practices, about the pesticides that are in the clothes that you're wearing right now. If you're a foodie, then grow something, cook something, support the people who are trying to feed us well. If your home is your sanctuary, then consider the polluted indoor air quality, right? Get rid of the toxins in your home. Whip up your own cleaning products, lemons, vinegar, pennies on the dollar, right? Be curious, do something. Participate in what Mary Oliver calls our one wild and precious life. And remember, when we talk about sustainability, that the truest definition of this does not involve the few, but many. We cannot achieve sustainability if we do not achieve sustainability for all. So maybe the question to ask is not what is sustainability, but rather what sustains us? And what exactly do we want to sustain? We have to answer these questions for ourselves. And then, with all our femaleness, with all our maleness, with all our transness, we move from that place. I am grateful for your time. I am grateful for your willingness to wrestle with these complexities because you know the stakes are high. I'd like to end with my favorite definition of sustainability from sociologist Denise Locke. She says, sustainability is like love and democracy. Multiple meanings, not always perfectly realized, but always struggled for. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Anupama Pasricha, and I'm a professor with the Department of Apparel Merchandising and Design. On behalf of the Planning Committee, Rafael Cervantes, Sue Cuncio, Mary Angela Baker, and I thank Joan Kelly for her generosity and continued support to St. Catherine University. We would like to thank Simran Sethi for her time spent engaging our students in and outside the classroom, conversing with faculty on how to incorporate sustainability into the curriculum, and of course, her inspiring presentation and story. I'm honored to present to Simran with an award that will commemorate her time spent at St. Catherine University. The award officially recognizes Simran Sethi as the 2013 Bonnie Jean Kelly and Joan Kelly Distinguished Scholar in Residence. The award is mounted in St. Catherine University frame and includes the St. Catherine University Medal. The medal was designed by Peter Lupori, sculptor and professor emeritus of art at the university. So I would like to give this award to Simran here. So beautiful. We would also like to present Simran with the 2012 Alumni Silk Scarf. Of course, something like what I'm wearing. The scarf was inspired by St. Catherine's University's iconic rose window, as you can see, and it was designed by Stephanie Lesko, a 2008 graduate who double majored in apparel design and fashion merchandising. So here's your scarf. So Simran, I just wanted to say that the last 2 days, I'm delving into the readings that you shared with us and the presentations. I participated in several of your presentations. It has been so rewarding for my personal development, personal philosophy on sustainability. And one thing I realized was that being a woman puts me at an advantage to bring change, and I really appreciate that. And it has actually refueled my passion for sustainability, And I also want to appreciate and thank you for lovely examples you brought that were very significant for me because they are from my field, a lot of fashion industry, textile industry, and consumer products. So thank you so much for bringing those. And I'm ready to lean in. So finally, I thank you all for coming and have a very good rest of your evening. Thank you.